thing is that this became my initial outlet for trying to identify my individual person. And you might ask, how can something like this help you to identify the world? Well, I'll tell you this. It helped me to, and I think I understood these things as well when I was a child, but in this case particular, it allowed me to experience it practically. Seeing other perspectives. Seeing them, experiencing them, having to, if you want to call it that, duel with them, to compete with them, and trying to understand the way that other people look at the world and how people will look at you. And I have to admit, this was something that, in my mind, it's something that could easily keep my attention pretty much all day, just getting into this kind of topic, because, well, the way I look at it is every day, every second, every less than a second, every moment that we exist, we take in information. We take in information through our five senses. Now, some people say that we take information from the sixth sense as well, and that's fine. But for now, I'll simply say the five senses to make things more simplistic. Now, as far as that's concerned, my mistake. So we take in information from the five senses. Where do we get this information from? All around us, really. Anything that the five senses can interpret as a feeling or a sense or whatever you want to call that raw material before it's actually processed by the brain. I actually call it the source for lack of another name. So forgive me if there's a term out there for it, but I just haven't looked it up. Forgive me for that. But either way, if there hasn't been a term for it, I simply call it the source. The source is where we get our information from. All information. Then, from there, our brain, not even just the brain, but the final processing of information is done in the brain. Everything that we see, hear, smell, touch, taste is interpreted by the brain. The interpretations are based on things that we have actually previously we have previously taken in and interpreted. And you probably heard about when people talk about making good first impressions. Part of that's sort of connected to this, because everything that we learn from the very beginning will have an effect on what we learn afterwards. And I would like to, and the thing is, and with all that information coming in and all these interpretations, I'm not going to lie, it gets complicated. How we interpret information and all that sort of stuff. And again, I'm no expert in how the brain works exactly, but from my own experiences, this is just the way that I feel, the way I understand things. So forgive me if I don't sound professional, but all of this information coming in and all of these processes being made, eventually we come to opinion. Now, some people have presented the argument, opinions are not based on facts and stuff, and you can't say that. The thing is I never said that the information that you take in is a fact. I said it comes from the source. Whether it's a fact or not is based on your perception, and whether the five senses are operating correctly and whatnot. And there's, it can get more complex than that. But the thing is that opinion, you're right, it's not based on fact, it's based on perspective. And rather, it also builds perspective. Or rather, it's the shape and form of our perspective. And then from there, opinions are created and more information is taken in. And we basically build our view of the world from those things. And every person is unique. There's no doubt about that. Because one person cannot be in the same place in the same time as another. People can be in the same place different times, or they can be in the same time but different places, but not both at the same time. Physically, it's impossible in our world, in our three-dimensional world. So, by law, by natural law, yes, obviously, we all have to be different. That's just the way it is. That's what makes us individuals. Well, actually, interpretation of ideas and such is actually what makes us individuals, but even being in different place and different time has its effect on that as well. So, we build our perspective of the world, our opinions based on the information we collect, and then eventually we get to a point where we need to have a reason for why we do things. Because an engine can run if it wants, but, if it has no reason for its existence, then, why should it be there? I'm mixing a couple metaphors here that I probably shouldn't, but, forgive me for that. As you probably can tell already, I don't have that awesome power of speech as some other individuals may have. Most of it is actually I'm trying to struggle to create the words to describe the feelings that are created thereof. And actually, that's another topic that I could get really deep into, but I'm not going to do that right now. But the thing is, we then create purpose, whether for ourselves or from others. Usually we have to have our own individual purpose that is driven by our own needs, our own desires, and what supports that purpose is our perspective, or rather our opinions. And that's sort of the foundation for individuality. Sort of those four things, if you want to call them those four specific things. Where was I going to go with this? I was talking about the mask and my individuality, how individuals, what individuals are specifically. And I was going to make a connection here that was based on the way that people look at me. Okay, so we got people that look at me. They interpret what I do. I do something, they interpret. Okay, so I got to think about this for a second. So in other words then, people judge me for what I do. Right, the argument I think originally was people are looking at me and they don't understand why I do the things that I do. And why basically why I do the things that I do. And it seems I guess to them it seems very strange, very unusual, and they don't know why I do it. Why I'm not like others. Why am I not like everyone else? To me, that sounds kind of hypocritical, considering individuality. And no, I'm not saying that my individuality is limited to my clothing, but that's the thing. It's not even just the clothing that people have a problem with. On the outside, people think if I get rid of the clothing, then everything will be fine. But whenever they sort of get into conflict with me, I've found that it's not just the mask, as people get into conflict with me, that they don't like. It's my individuality. The things that I do different from other people. And that's the thing that sort of annoys people about me, is that I'm so different from one another. Well, there's not much I can do about that. I was born different. Even my mom can confirm. I was very, very different when I was a child. I was unlike any baby she ever had, or something like that. Well, she only had 2 children, but anyways, that's not really the point. The point is, I'm unique. But people don't believe that your unique style should be represented in what you wear. Or rather, they think that, in my particular case, that it shouldn't scare people. But what scares people is more or less subjective. Like, how can you... Okay, this is a good point. Even when I was, like, more or less an adult, I think I was 18 or something like that, there was this one person that, I don't know what it was. I had never met them before. I had never talked to them before. But you know what? They took one look at me and they were scared. So either there was someone before me that looked like me or something and did something wrong, or maybe there was some sort of feature about me that just looked off. I was just me. But you know what? Someone was terrified of me. And someone could make all of these excuses. Oh, maybe it was that sweater you were wearing. Well, I didn't wear brand sweaters, so unless they had a problem with baby blue or black or gray or brown or whatever, if they have a problem with the colors of the rainbow, then yeah, I don't know. So, like, how far can people go by saying you shouldn't wear something because it makes people fear? How far can you go with that? And be reasonable. More so, how can you discriminate against someone based on something that is not necessarily morally wrong? And by morally wrong, I mean things that harm oneself or harm others specifically. I think those are the biggest issues that we have to deal with, is things that don't harm others and don't harm yourself. Or rather, if you're willing to go through with whatever it is that you need to do, just remember that there are consequences for your actions, and you must be willing to accept those consequences. But that's something more complicated, and perhaps I'll talk about that some other time. But either way, because to me, that whole idea of fearing something is just, it's childish. I feared things when I was a little kid, and you know what? I might fear some things now. Actually, I had a very complicated and very complex fear when I was a little child, but it was not something that was really tangible or really quite understood, in the sense that it didn't seem practical. So, I mean, as far as any real practical fears when I was a little kid, not really, no. No, I never really had any practically applicable fears when I was a child. I mean, fear of darkness and stuff, maybe, but that didn't last very long at all. It was mostly about losing control over my mind, losing control over my... that's the perfect way to put it. Even though you had complete control over your body, or at least it felt like it, losing your individuality, that was what I feared the most when I was a little kid. And you know what? That makes perfect sense now that I think about it. I just discovered that now. fear of losing your individuality. Still having feelings, still having control over your body, more or less, but for some reason there's some force that you can't explain that's causing you to do all these things that you don't necessarily want to do, but you're forced to do them anyways, even though you still have control over your body. It's a little bit of a mind buster to think about, but that's what it was. Fear of losing individuality. And I had this fear when I was like 3 or 4 or even 5 and 6. This was something that I had for a long time. Sometimes I would have, I don't know if you call them night terrors. They were definitely nightmares. So that was something big. Like, that was something big when I was a little kid. But no, as far as everything else is concerned, nowadays I have my individuality. I know who I am. I do things and I've learned so much from wearing the mask, not just about human interaction and such, but even from a practical standpoint. I've learned about different materials that are best for wearing, things that are the most comfortable, different applications for the mask especially. And it's not even just the mask. It got to a point where I started wearing I was always trying to wear other things that made me feel more comfortable. And you know what? I found a lot of different mechanisms that were quite useful for keeping pieces of attire together, or different pieces of attire that helped my lifestyle work along better and such. And yeah, it was unique. It was different. Some people didn't necessarily like it, but you know what? There are actually a lot of people out there that, thought it was pretty cool what I was doing. They appreciated what I was doing. And they didn't think I was going to some weird carnival or whatever or something. They saw what I was wearing, and they knew that I would wear it basically every day, unless I found something better. And that happens. I find things that are better suited for what I consider to be my practical needs and such. But that's something that some people don't understand. Practical needs, like what? And they know what practical is, but for me it's like, so these things make you comfortable, but people are afraid of you. No, people aren't afraid of me, but they keep saying that over and over again. So, like I said before, it makes me wonder why people think this way. And like I said, it came to me not too long ago, it must be because they see me, they look at what I do, but they don't understand it, even though I explain it to them. And perhaps it's because they don't know how my mind works.